Good afternoon, everyone. We are so glad you could join us today. John, do you want to say something first, or you want me to introduce Daphne?
Well, I'll just say hello, and you're welcome to introduce, and I look forward to the presentation.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin Sockbeeson. I'm an assistant professor of management and the director of our DBA program here at Jacksonville University. And we have a number of our faculty and DBA students in the room with us today, where Dr. Daphne Wang is going to be presenting to us about firm value, earnings management, and corruption. A paper that she worked on with one of her colleagues here at JU, Dr. Bob Omas, and one of our DBA students, Brian Sakai. So we're very excited to welcome Daphne today. She is one of our shining stars here in the Davis College of Business, who does really excellent research. So we're excited to share this with you and hope you all have some good questions and comments for Daphne when she's done presenting. I will be monitoring the chat as we're going on. I'll be sitting over there with my laptop, so feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat and we'll get to them. But I'm going to turn it over to Daphne to tell us about her paper.
Thank you for having me. Okay. Thank you for introducing me already, and so you can see the title of the research paper. And actually, this project is collaborating with the two authors, and you can see on the screen. So the one on the left is Wang. He's our publicist student. This material is original for these dissertations, and we revised them, and we just recently present at the meeting with the conference in July. And so he graduated in 2006, and this paper, which is just this paper. And runs many years experience in the commercial actually in the trade industry. It was originally from Vietnam, and then making it most into the emphasize that. Okay, so we also has an incredible author that so we both co-chair one presentations, and we continue working with him. After the presentation, we'll hopefully we can get this paper out in the summer. We have a program in July, and I always got open in August. This part is still in working process, so it's still not done yet. And so you have to know to me and Leslie and give you what we have so far. And at the end, we'll open up your questions and comments. So let me introduce my co-author, Bob Omas. He's an accounting professor of accounting, comes from the College of Accounting. He's a researcher especially on financial reporting, equity valuation, and management, and dependent. So on the associate professor of finance, my research topic, especially using the case study and moving to the detail specifically one of the company performance of their financial decision. So in my previous
Hi, Daphne.
Yes.
Hi, excuse me. This is John. There's an echo in the audio. I wonder if it's possible if maybe you get closer to the mic, or if there's something going on in the room might adjust.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I can just go to the podium.
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay.
That is much better.
My
Thank you.
voice is kind of small, soft, so I just want to make sure people can hear me. Okay, that's fine. So
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So my past publication using the event study published already is involved with some kind of CEO scandals, anti-money laundering, and cyber breaches, and also study on the financial bailout, merger acquisition, and credit ranking, and so on. So I'm so happy my co-author, Dr. Omas, is here in the audience. So I'm in charge for presentation, and you are in charge for taking the question and answer. Okay, so the theme of this research is around this important piece of act called Foreign Corrupt Practice Act, and which is passed in 1977. So during the Watergate investigation in 1973 and 74, they discovered many U.S. firms was paying the government official and politician or political party overseas. So there's a need to have the anti-bribery laws because more companies are going global. Okay, so when you're going global across the border, you might involve with more transaction and you're trying to get your sales, and so you are doing some kind of ethical practice. And also we find out this bribery can cost global GPA up to 5%. So it's very costly, and also there's a financial cost to the company. So there are two important anti-bribery laws globally. So one is the one we are talking about, FCPA 1977. The other one is a UK bribery, and they passed after United States, so it's 2010, so still very new. So this FCPA contains both anti-bribery and accounting provisions. So the purpose for this act is to try to prevent illegal and unethical practices, also create a fair, clean playing field in the international trade, and further can increase the quality of the internal control. So why it's been done? So we have to talk about our motivation, right? So this is part of a financial misconduct. So there are tons of research find out the financial misconduct normally has the short-term negative impact on the stock market, and especially using the event study, we always find that. Yeah, many. I'm just give some example over there. But what we care about is what kind of research related to FCPA Act. So that's at all 2020 Journal of Business Ethics paper, they find a negative short-term market response and also a long-term value decreasing in the passenger of FCPA. Another paper, 2017 review of a financial studies by Zooming, they test on the passenger of this UK BFRA. They also find out the similar result as well. And the recent paper 2021, they find the retail investor, normally they are less likely to remain invested on the company if they find out this company was involved with the FCPA violation. And so it's very important we try to find what kind of gap exists in the literature. And we find out, so that's at all 2020 and Zooming 2017, they test on this anti-bribery act, but they are looking at the time of a passenger of this act. So they are not looking at the time the company violate this FCPA act. And also we did not find too much on the earning management perspective for the long term. And most of the time you can see the financial misconduct has a short-term impact because of the news coming out, it definitely hurts stock market. So our focus will be more looking to the long-term impact perspective. So the purpose of these studies, we're using the event study methodology, and we want to answer two questions. First, what is the impact of FCPA enforcement action on the firm value? Okay, because of finance topic, we always care about firm value. How will this kind of practice affect the company performance? The second one, what's the impact on the company engaged with the earning management? Okay, we also interested. Okay, so this has come out more in this past summer. We also come into more interested to try to explore the moderated effect from the corruption culture at the firm level, state level, and the country level. Okay. So give you a quick brief summary about the paper. So we got sample 93 company, they violate this FCPA, and we collect the data from the Stanford Law School. And the main result, we find the company, they violate this FCPA enforcement action, they affect their firm value negatively. And also the company engaged with the earning management activity. And so our event study also, we want to make sure the result was not just driven by some factors. So we also engage employ different kind of methodology, such as propensity score matching, Hammond two-stage model to control for endogeneity, and also using the difference in different subsample analysis. So let's talk about what's a corruption, so everybody could understand what we are talking about. So as you can see on the screen, there are three sources that define the corruption. So the common thing is, you can see, is abuse or misuse of the public power in trust, and to gain for the personal or gain for the business. Okay, so this is what we call about corruption. So this graph shows you from the Transparency International, they survey and they give this kind of annual global perception index every year. So this is showing on 2019. So the score in red, dark red, so which is indicate the highly corrupt. Okay, and so we are lucky we are in US, so I can point later. Okay, so you can see USA is here, so it's a more yellow, and but still not that good, it's about in the middle. Okay, compared to the other region, you can see really dark red. So this the FCPA clearinghouse managed by the Stanford Law School. And so we want to show you some kind of information from their website. So you can see this is since the passage of FCPA 1977, they're showing you the total and average sanction imposed on the entity per year. And you can see majority were grouping in the past 15 years. So now start from 1977. So there are not too many cases that happen. So the most cases happen in the past 15 years. So there are more statistics you can see here. You need to know the regulator can oversee this FCPA, including Department of Justice, DOJ, and SEC. So the both has a right to investigate the cases that might violate this FCPA Act. And so you can see from 1977 up to the most recent year, the color in orange is the cases investigated by the DOJ, and the yellow was invested by SEC. So you can see again, the cases are grouping in the past 20 years, and also there's a lot of overlap. So you can see they investigated the cases about the same time. So this is to show you statistic. 2016 is the year that have the most enforcement action, because at that time, I think SEC they put into a lot of budget, hire more people to investigate that. So that's why we find our sample eventually find out is very similar to this data what we have. So this is slide showing you the corporate sanction. So when you violate this one, it can be a corporate executive, they're in charge for the matter, and it also can be a corporation. So you can see the sanction amount, and the biggest one is around 2015 to 17, and the next one will be 19 to 2022. So the amount can be very closely to the front. So this is the last slide to talk about the FCPA statistic. So since we say the cases investigated by the SEC or DOJ, not all the cases will be accused or to settle. So you can see there's a 93% of the cases can be settled with the SEC, but only 75% will be settled by the DOJ. And since this regulation imposed for any company that have a practice in the United States, so they might including foreign company. Okay, so you can see 61% of the defender are domestic corporation, and 39% are foreign company. And this is all the sanction they accumulate so far is more than $13 trillion they can collect from this sanction. And the average monthly cost for this investigation costs about 1.6 million every month. So because those statistics we find out from the Stanford Law School, and so that's why we think about what would be the reasonable samples, what we need to collect from there. So they give us 458 cases to start with. So this is all the cases that we request and they get to us. Okay, and we only want to focus on the public trade firm, because the private firm, sometimes it's difficult to get a company financial. So we remove 49 cases. We also identify about 205 cases that they are double count in the data. So which is as what we say, the cases can be initial by DOJ, or they can be initial by SEC, or both. So there's a double count, and so this is a 205 cases. We also there's a three. Okay, so there's three important event day in the data. So one is initial day, investigation day, and resolution day. And so the first 2 days that we saw a lot of missing values. So it will be difficult to define it as our event day, because we are doing event study, we need to have an event day. So eventually we decide to use the resolution day. So that is the day the company finally got settle with the SEC or DOJ, and then they got penalty or they go into the jail. So this is the event that we are using based on the resolution date. So we find 2 cases are missing this variable, so we remove that, and we only keep the past 20 years of the data. So we lost 15 cases, and later, because we gonna need to run analysis inevitable, we gonna need to merge the data with compute state data, which is including a lot of company financial data. So we lost 94 cases. So eventually, we only have 1,328 frame year observation, which is comprised with 93 company, which is our sample. We also collect the data besides compute state. We also collect institution ownership data from Thomson Reuters Icon, inside the ownership data from ExecuCom, and worldwide governance index from World Bank. Okay. So first research question is want to look into the firm value valuation effect. So consistent with most of the research, so we think and we hypothesized our first research question, the FCPA variation would decrease the value of the valuation firm. Our second research question is based on the earning management perspective. So consistent with the prior literature, we conjecture the company subject to this FCPA enforcement action will engage with the earning management within a view to have a solid financial health. Okay. So let's talk about methodology on variable of interest. So for the first research question, the dependent variable what we are looking is a firm value. So the first proxy we are using is called Tobin's Q. So Tobin's Q is a very commonly proxy people are using to evaluate in the firm value. So they take into account the market value of equity, and you add the full value of the liability and scale by the total asset. So it's a very, very common measure. However, Peterson and Tyler 2017 JFE paper, they find out there's an intangible asset part was slow in response to the investment opportunity. So that's why they modify this Tobin's Q, and they including the valuation effect of a company knowledge capital and organization capital and human capital into the denominator. And so as you can see, this total Q formula, especially focus on the denominator. So denominator including the replacement cost for physical capital and the intangible capital. Specifically, this intangible capital consistent company externally purchase intangible assets such as goodwill on the balance sheet, and also internally created intangible assets such as R&D, SG&A spending, and also organization and human capital such as a brand and the client relationship. So Peter and Tyler, they insist total Q is better than the other measures such as Tobin's Q and also market to book measure. So this is throughout. Market to book also is a very popular one. But they think it's better because they take into account for these intangible capitals. And also they show the total Q can capture companies' investment opportunity. And also they can increase the investment and the Q relationship. So that's why we including this one as our second proxy for the dependent variable in our first research question. So so far we have 2 proxy for the first research question to measure the firm value impact. So the second research question is to investigate about the earning management activity. So again, we're using the 2 proxy in these cases for the dependent variable. So the first one is using, we try to measure discretionary accrual. So based on the modified Jones models. So as you can see, there are 3 steps we have to follow in order to measure these variables. So the first step, as you can see here, is the actual discretion accrue, scale by the total asset in the year before, the previous year. And we regress for the 3 factors on the right-hand side of the equation. So this is 3 factors, including inverse of a total asset in year before, change of the revenue scale by the total asset in the year before, and also PP&E scale by the total asset in the year before. So through this regression, the main purpose is we try to get a coefficient from this first step in order to calculate the expected or normal discussion or accrue. So that's why we put this coefficient and add into multiply with the original 3 factor. But we change the second factor. This is based on modified joint models. We change the second factor by taking into account about the change of account receivable. Okay, so you can see that there's a difference between the change of revenue and the change of account receivable. So once we got this expected accrue, then we get abnormal accrue by using the actual accrue minus expected accrue. So we got abnormal discretion accrue based on this modified joint models. The second policy we are using for this research question too, we utilize a real earning management model. Okay, and so as you know, sometimes the company manager they try to manipulate the sales, and so they can increase the price discount or get it easy credit turn to the customer. Okay, so we are based on this model, so we are trying to follow the 3 steps again to try to measure this measurement. So the CFO is cash flow from the operation scaled by the asset the year before. So we regress this available on the 3 factor again. So the 3 factor including inverse asset in the year before, sales over the asset, change of the sale over the asset. So similarly, we get a coefficient from the first step and we estimate the normal or expected operating cash flow. Then we find the change, the difference between the actual and expected, and we get the abnormal cash flow from the operation. And we follow Badesher 2011 accounting review paper. We multiply -1 in order for us to easy to interpret the result. So in the literature, also find many variable they can affect the dependent variable, which is we are interested. So we further including several control variable here. So which is including the size, profitability, we using ROA, and we also including BGM, which is the proxy for audit quality. This is a dummy variable. And we also have the dummy variable for ICD, which is take into consideration about internal control efficiency. We also consider about merger acquisition event can affect company fund value as well. And we also including accrue and the sales market concentration and dividend year, and also corporate governance. So we're using institutional ownership construct similar to the Hoffman index for a measure as a control. So this is a firm value temporal models, and we're using the difference in difference methodology. So we try to test on the first hypothesis. So the first hypothesis is saying if the company has a variation, they should see the decrease in the firm value. Okay, so you can see the equation model show highlight this research model. So our variable interest is this post dummy. So these are post dummy, including post 0, post 1, post 2, post 3, which indicate post 0 is time 0 event year. Post 1 is 1 year after the event, 2 years after the event, 3 years after the event. So we want to see if there's a continuous effect on the firm value. So the first model you can see here is a firm value 1, which is the total skew as a dependent variable. The second model, we're using the total skew. So if you look at this 2 model right now. Okay, so I forgot to say, here we also including, so we using the firm value to regress on the post. And together with a whole bunch of control variable I just showed you earlier. And we also including Denmark French 12 industry fixed effect. Remember, we might have an outlier for all the measurements. So we winterize all the variable, continuous variable at 1 and 99 percentile. Okay, so let's look at the result first. Model 1 and model 2.
So you can see highlight in red, which is we show the negative firm value effect. And especially on the model 2, you can see this negative impact not just only happen in the year of the event, also year after, 2 years after. So this is the total skew. But if you look into the total skew, this impact is even further extend to the 3 years after the event. Okay, and the model 3 and model 4, we're using the same model, but we remove the finance and utility sector and we run the model again, and we find a similar result, as you can see on the screen. And when we remove that, because those two sectors are highly regulated, different from the other industry. So this is slide showing you the earning management temporal model, similar to what we showed earlier, but we are using to test on the hypothesis 2. So we want to see if a company will engage you with earning management. So we're using the difference in different model. You can use we use that earning management as a dependent variable to regress on post dummy together with the control variable and with a fixed effect. So this format are very similar to what we showed in the previous slide. And the dependent variable EN1 is a discretion accrue, EN2 is earning management has been multiplied by 1. So interesting, you can see we did not see earning management right away in the time 0. Okay, so you can see the red color. This is the not show until 2 years after the event. Okay, so remember we saw earlier the company firm value effect right away. So the company did not really take the action to manage earning until 2 years after. Okay, so this is a discretion accrue. This one is using a real earning management. So we find out they did not happen until 3 years after the event. Okay, so this is consistent with the literature because discretion accrue is less costly to the company. Real earning management, really you need to cut down something. So it's more costly to the company. So in the literature, already say normally company, if they want to measure earning, they start from discretion accrue first, then real earning management after. So we using this temporal model, we can see when did it happen. Okay, and so it's really good. And again, model 3 and model 4, we remove the finance and utility sector and try to see if the results still hold. So sorry, they covered in the screen. Actually, the results are similar. We want to make sure the result are robust. It's not driven by specific factor. So after we remove the finance and utility, we also consider about last financial crisis, 2008, 2009. So we remove this 2 years and the results still quantitatively similar. We also utilize a panel generalized least square method to control for autocorrelation and the heterogeneity issue. The results still quantitatively similar. So we also want to control for endogeneity. Some omit variable, maybe we did not find it. Okay, so we utilize 2 more methods to conduct our robust check. So one is called propensity score matching, and the other one is a Hammond 2-stage model. So we'll show you in these 2 methodology. So propensity score matching has been in the research for many years, and especially our research is related to the small size sample. And so we use this propensity score matching and try to get a control group. And so this control group, they are not involved with any FCPA cases at all. So we initially estimate this equation, what you can see on the screen, for the sample firm and all other firms on the computed data in the same industry. We're using the 3-digit SIC code. And together with the size, together with the leverage effect on Z-score and the age, and try to predict this ROE. So this ROE, return on equities profitability measure, we use it as a proxy for the propensity score. So we want to find the sample firm, they never have an FCPA event, but they have a similar ROE score to the sample. And traditional, most people are using one-on-one propensity score matching. But recent year, we also find in the medical field, in social science behavior area, they're also using 1-to-multiple matching because they find some concern, especially for the small sample. If you use a one-on-one, you waste a lot of sample data. And especially you might induce another kind of bias because you did not have incomplete matching. So we follow the literature, our data using a 1-to-multiply matching. So the first matching method, we are using the nearest neighbor matching option without replacement. And we want to measure the results still robust. So we're using the second method with additional bootstrapping 50 times. So we come out 2 matching group. Another endogeneity can come in from the sample cell selection bias. Okay, so we employ this Hammond 1979 2-stage models. So the first stage is appropriate regression. So we want to see what kind of factor can predict the company to build a sample. So you can see the dependent variable is the probability of a sample equal to 1. And we look into the literature, we identify 6 variables that might help to explain the probability of the sample, the company will be the sample. So we including 6 variables over here. So the lag is last period. So if the company involved with the foreign transition, so this is the first one. If a company last year has engaged with some kind of major restructuring charge, or if a company has a loss last period, or we also look into the age of the company, and also company has an internal control deficiency by the auditor. We also look into the corporate governance perspective. So we including the bondholder, actually this will be the positive, have a negative impact over there. Then the purpose for this one is to try to extract inverse mean ratio. So you can see highlight here. We want this one is try to get this inverse mean ratio. So we can put into the second stage with our regression to control for this sample cell selection bias. And again, we're using the similar equation what we have, research model we have earlier. We want to test on the firm value on the first research question and earning management on the second research question. And here especially, this because the matching firm doesn't really have an event year. So what we test, we try to predict is using the next period of the firm value and the earning management in order to predict. So this is slide showing the result on the first stage. Okay. And so you can see pretty much those variable we identify has a predictive power to the sample. And so model 1 is using the matching 1 data, and model 2 is using the second matching data set. And you can see at the bottom, the sample was over 95% correctly to classify. So we got this inverse mean ratio from the first stage. As what we showed you earlier, we including into the 2 research questions what we have earlier. So we want to see control for sample cell selection bias. If the sample still have an impact, if the company has variations, still can predict the negative firm value or predict positive earning management. Okay, so you can see here, the first 2 models of the firm value, we're using, the first one is a total skew, the second one is total skew. I'm sorry, this one got, let me see if I can move the way. Okay, so the third model is the earning manager 1, and the number 4 model is the earning manager 2. So what we expect is this will be negative significant. So this is as what we predicted, and this one will be positive significant. So we basically, this one is the first matching firm, and we find support. This one is the second matching firm with the additional 50 times bootstrapping. And we run the model again, and we still find consistent result. Okay, so that's our first part of the study. Okay, so now we move on to the second part of the study. So we wonder, is there any moderate effect to affect the relationship for SPA versus the firm value and the earning management? So we want to look in from the culture, corruption culture perspective, at the firm level, at the state level, and the national level. Okay, so talk about what's a company culture first, by the way. So it was defined a shared value and belief by the company employees. So they can influence the decision maker through the internal notes or group note. And the corruption we defined you earlier. So new 2016 JFE paper, they find the firm with a high corruption culture are more likely to engage in management. So this paper did not talk about firm value, but we find this one maybe help us. And so the measurement they use in this paper, corruption, is looking to corporate insiders. Okay, so their country of original or country of ancestors. Okay, so where their grandparents coming from. Okay, so they measure the corruption based on the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index. So we know, okay, so company got variation, and that is a big deal for the corporation, especially for the CEO. Okay, and so how do they do that? So based on the course of 2013, we define the integrity and the ethical value of a senior management provide the foundation for an effective governance structure. And so in accounting literature, there's a term called CEO top of the top. So because they are most important component for the causal framework. Olmsted and Chirac, 2015, they find using the high insider CEO ownership, they can reverse a negative relationship between the high PE and the return relationship. So this is a very famous relationship. Normally you find out from the efficient market hypothesis. Okay, and so follow their methodology, we think about, okay, we probably can use in the corporate insiders. SEC define corporate insider is if any shareholder they own the share more than 10%. Okay, so we care about CEO because it's the top of top, the top of top. Sorry. So we construct this CEO high insider ownership based on the 10% of ownership. We also do two more process, 15% or 20%, even higher. And we want to see how this CEO high insider ownership can reverse this corruption culture of the company, can reverse the original relationship what we find earlier. So we look into FCPA and firm value. And so you can see here the variable of interest is on the top. So we including the post-dummy, CEO high insider ownership 10, 15, and 20. We also interact the post with 3 CEO high insider ownership. You can see on the first 3 model is using the Tobin's Q as a proxy for the dependent variable. And the model 4 to model 6, we're using the totals Q. Our variable interest, we want to see if the CEO has the company has a CEO high insider ownership after the event, if the firm value still will be changed or not. So we did not find any result. This slide showing you is a high insider ownership moderate effect on FCPA and the earning management. So we're using a similar method. We're trying to get an interaction term between post and the CEO insider with 3 different levels. So the first 3 models, we're using the Tobin's Q as a dependent variable, and the last 3 models, we're using the totals Q. So we find the company has a CEO insiders. After the event, the earning management decrease. And this is 2 slides we just show you is only sample only the data set. So you can see the small sample size over there. We also run additional matching firm. Okay, what we have a matching 1, matching 2, and to see if the results still similar. So what we find, the last one, this one firm value, we find some kind of impact over there. But since it's not consistent with the sample firm, so we don't think the result is robust. But we do find identical, almost identical result for this FCPA earning management effect by the high insider ownership. The next level we want to look into the corporate corruption culture at the state level. So this was recommended by one of our dissertation committee, actually she is my dissertation chair, to consider about state corruption culture. So that's et al. 2016 and Brown et al. 2019. So they find the firm located in the corrupt state tend to have a lower firm value, market value. Okay, and that's an 2020 Journal of Business Ethics publication. They even find that using the FCPA, they find if the firm in the corrupt state, especially for those involved with exporting business to the corrupt country, they suffer the most on their performance following the FCPA. Their firm value is using the ROA and the Tobin's Q. Okay, they also find the company underperformed 3 years after the passenger of FCPA. So remember, their test is using event year using the 1977, the passenger of FCPA. Our study is using the resolution year when they receive the penalty from the SEC or DOJ. So their measure for the corruption is calculate the ratio of the number of corruption conviction to the state population in million for each state year observation. Okay, and for the long-term performance, they using the time series average of the state level corruption over 36 months period. So they come out two key variable interests. One is the corruption. So they ran the headquarters state corruption based on the average number of the conviction per million population. And they also create a dummy variable, which is a high corruption, equal to 1 if the headquarters ran about the median. I hate to tell you, you can see this one. This is the United States. So the black color means it's more corrupt. And Florida is here. It's another top, but the race next one, and the Florida is here. Still not too good. And so we adopt this methodology and we test our sample. I'm happy to tell you so far I did not find a result. Okay. The last layer of a culture, a corruption culture, we look into the national culture perspective. So FCPA apply to multinational enterprise because any company that have an operation in the US, they are required to be regulated by this FCPA. So Wang and Esqueda 2014, they find the national culture can affect firms' financial decisions. And they suggest there's a valuation discount. Okay. Surpass and the Rahman 2018, they find the national corruption culture can affect how much amount they bribery. And these are two research papers, they use a different kind of a national culture measurement. So the one and Esqueda, this is my paper. We use a Hofstad, the cultural dimension, these are 5 or 6 over there. And the second paper is using the corruption culture distance between the home and host country. So in this paper, we try to utilize is using the Worldwide Governance Index managed by the World Bank. And they have 6 major, we specifically look into the control of corruption. So we put WGICC. Okay. And if you look into the on the right-hand side of this table, those are all the sample. They are headquartered or incorporated in those countries. And definitely we have probably 75% of the sample, they are original from the United States. And this is their World Governance Index, especially on the control of corruption. And you can see some negative, that means it's really bad. But if you look into the United States, we are not as good as the other country as well. So I divide the sample into 2 groups, US firm versus a non-US firm. And I do some kind of median statistic to see if there's a significant difference on this world governance control of the corruption. So we did find significant differences between these 2 groups in terms of a mean, in terms of a median using the T statistic and the real cost statistic. So this picture is showing you here is looking to the work governance indicator. So the green means it's better, and the pink means it's not that good. Okay, so this is this guy from their website in 2020, specifically for the control of corruption. On the right upper corner, we show you the two figures. On the top, this is the United States. At the lower bottom, this one is OECD country, high income OECD country, for the sample period 1996 to 2020. And we see OECD country kind of very stable, but not United States. Okay. We also show you a further statistic over here. You can see the control of the corruption for United States. 3-year comparison, 2020, 2010, 2015, and 2020. You can see the United States, the governance score decreased, especially after 2015. Okay, so we want to test on is there's any moderate effect on the country corruption culture. So we run this sample data, and we separate the firm into the two groups. So non-US firm versus US firm. So you can see the first two models using the firm value, which is the total skew, and the model 3 and model 4 using the total skew. Again, this is subsample analysis using the SUR analysis. And you can see highlight in red, which is indicate the negative firm value effect was driven by US firm, not by non-US firm. Okay, so this is what we can see most significant impact over there. So this slide, we test on the second hypothesis on the earning management. Again, we find similar result. The earning management start from the accrued arrangement and followed by real earning management. As you can see, this is the earning management 1, and this is the earning management 2, using the non-US firm versus US firm. Okay. And they do showing a similar pattern that what we showed earlier. This is what we have so far. So let me give you a quick conclusion. As I said, this is still ongoing process. We haven't really have time to finish it up. And so at least so far, what we find, we show the firm has a decline in the firm value. They can be as long as up to 3 periods. So it's not one-time deal. Oh, you got penalty and nothing happened. You can go back to do the bad thing again. No, we want to show you the negative impact can be as long as up to 3 years after we see the enforcement action. And also we show this as post sequential occurrence of the abnormal accrue and the real earning management. So this is consistent with the literature found. And we also find the high insider ownership decrease the tendency for violation firm to manage the earning. And finally, we find the decline in firm value and likely of engaging earning management are more pronounced for US firm. So we hope to make some contribution. Okay, so we show the firm value is a statistic significant negatively affected by this FCPA enforcement action. Specifically, we find the negative firm value persists, especially for the total skew. And so no researcher using the total skew not much on investigate company firm value effect by this special financial misconduct. And as we mentioned earlier, total skew take into account about the intangible asset, which is including company branding, reputation, and those is very difficult to measure. And we are happy to use this new measurement, and we find the support evidence. The second contribution, we find the support, the firm engaged with earning management. And as what we said, it's a consequence, there's a sequential occurrence. So they all not come out in the same time. But when they find a company firm value effect, the managers start to try to think about what can I do? So they start to doing the earning management. So they start from the accrue first because it's less costly. Then it doesn't work out, they will do the real earning management. And so this is consistent with the literature finding. So we hope have some implication to the many different groups. So the first group is shareholders. So we hold the shareholder, we can provide some kind of knowledge of this impact of FCPA funds. So at the same time, we can press the company board to adhere to more effective corporate governance. So the secondary, the research can be utilized by the company as well to extend the long-term impact of the FCPA enforcement action on the firm value. Also, enforcement action spotlight the deficiency in the firm internal control. So indicate some area for possible improvement by the managers. And lastly, we find out the auditor, we suggest the auditor and the regulator might need to exercise greater scrutiny in their assessment of a company financial report. Because you can see the company might not do the bad practice right away, but they can do it 2 years, 3 years after. We recognize there's some limitation on this research. Actually, I only these two, we should have a 10. But right now I can think about first two. This paper got rejected by AAA, and because they say sample size is too small. Because we just have to recognize we have this small sample issue. So that's why we're using the different kind of propensity score matching and we're trying to conquer this issue. And we test on the sample level. We also test on the matching and try to find out if the results are robust. And we did do that. And we also want to point that out. There are some similar studies. They're using the same data and their sample size is even smaller than us. So like Surpass and Rahman 2018 Journal of Business Ethics, they only have, including 89 cases, we have 93. Daphne 2020 Journal of Business Ethics again. They're using the first state observation, they only come out 1,071. So you think about 50 states, right? So how many companies they have? 20. So we are much better off than what had been published. Also, the consideration, we can extend this paper to including the UK Bribery Act. Okay, so we know the Zumin 2017, the review of a financial study has been do the research on this one, but again, the event year is on the passenger of this act, not when did it happen for each firm. So there's a total different event study methodology. So maybe this is we did not consider this part of the act impact on our sample firms. So this is what we can think about. Thank you. So I hope you enjoy your lunch when you hear my presentation. So where is my co-author? I thought I only need to do my presentation and you will take all the questions. So as you know, this is an ongoing process. So it's not really finished yet. So we got a lot of things still on the way. So I saw some chat. So can I see some question over there?
Yeah, I think we've got somebody with a question online.
Yes, I have a question. I see there are some in the chat, but I will break in line and ask a question. First of all, very interesting presentation. There's a lot going on here in terms of measurement of different variables. But you mentioned the corporate corruption culture. And if I recall, you said you measured that by looking at the insider ownership. In other words, the greater internal ownership, the more corrupt the culture. Is that correct?
No, actually, thank you for the question. It's very good because I even debate with my co-author, Dr. Omas, he's not here. Actually, the high insider ownership can be good or can be bad. Okay, so the good is because they are the shareholder as well. So now they got a valuation. They have to take care of that because they affect the firm value. But they are entrenched. So they own the company share 10% or 15% or 20%. They can entrench. That means you cannot get rid of that. So they can, if they are bad, they can have the bad corruption culture of the corporation. So we really don't know it can be good or bad. But based on almost a paper 2015, they find out they have a positive impact. And so that's why we give a try, we see how will they go. So we did not find any impact on the firm value, but we see it's good impact on the money management perspective. So that almost the question is asking about high insider ownership, which is we discussed a lot. So if you want to add in, please feel free. My class is here, so I want to call in up.
Yeah, thank you. I think you cleared that up because I think that's an interesting area because, you know, the greater the insider ownership, that would be aligned with sort of the agency argument, right? That the owner is there. So the idea that it would be more corrupt when you don't have the owner would run against that. So interesting, that struck me, but very, very good presentation. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Any other? Yes.
I'll speak fast so people can hear me online. Very good, lots of variables. Wow. I do have a question on moderating. Talk about the levels, right? One was the state level. And I think if I have it correctly, we measure state corruption based on number of convictions divided by the population.
Yes.
But these populations, what you look at convictions are people, you're looking also at publicly traded companies.
Yes, they are using the public trade company.
The number of companies, publicly traded companies in the state. Because for example, Jacksonville, we have, you know, well, we used to have we have FIS, FNF,
Yeah.
or Rainier, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then California, which has maybe not a public company through their tax structure, because they spend out money, but they have a huge population. So I have a small numerator and a large denominator.
So they have to scale by the population.
Right.
So control for the size of state. So they scale by the population, number of a population for each state. So they control for the size.
So if you don't have a lot more publicly traded companies headquartered in the states, you have a higher likelihood of having convictions.
It could be possible. Yeah.
That's an idea.
Yeah. Thank you. It sounds really interesting because as why I said we did not find the result on the state level yet. So we're still trying to see is anywhere we're missing. Maybe that's a good point. Yeah. So maybe we can modify that measurement to take into account for how many public trade, but I don't know is there any data I can find that one. So sometimes you have an idea, but you need to think about where can I get lots of data, lots of information.
And then my other question is, I'm done some research on earnings management, just a little bit, not very good, this financial reporting quality. Is there a variable in your standard winner regression model that you can use for the zones? You don't have to go through all the zones. You can just put something in there to stand for zones.
No, that is a long process to get this measurement. Yeah, no. Yeah. Thank you for the question. So the earning management measurement is really complicated. So you have to run hundreds of lines in order to get those kind of available collect data. Yeah, thank you. All the analytic data set. Okay, yeah. So this is earning management score, and I forgot the name, the researcher's name, and he has some kind of equation model similar to Z-score. Z-score is normally using for the leverage company leverage or bankruptcy score. And so he created this M score. We have all the analytic data bases. We have 3 databases. We usually have 3 databases. One of them, they including this M score. It is dummy available if a company meet kind of a threshold and indicate company are engaged with earning management. And so will be a simple measurement. Yeah, I think that's the almost measure you probably will cover in the DBA classes. So show students how to use an easier way instead of construct different kind of earning management measure in the research paper. But when you go to the dissertation stage, maybe you gonna need to learn is how to measure those difficult accrued measurement. Thank you.
Nick online.
Dr. Wang and Nick Visconti here. I just had to ask a question. Did you initially factor in debarment a company's debarment with working with the US government into any of the variables that you use, because I work in the government. I work as a government contractor. I deal with FCPA in Africa and Central Asia all the time, and it's a touchy thing. But I've seen 3 companies basically almost have to shut down operations due to debarments. I was just curious if you either addressed that in the robustness test, or did you, or because I would assume they would be outliers in the data, because a company's revenue would almost immediately, take a very big hit from a debarment, because all operations stop immediately on a debarment. I just was curious if you factored debarments in at all.
So you are talking about factor the volume, the revenue volume?
Yes, ma'am. Or
Okay.
if you factored debarment in at all in the variables.
Okay, so we did see some research. They filter the company have to have a revenue more than certain number. I can't remember from the top of my head, but we only control for the size in our regression. So if you go back to see our list of control variable, the first variable we control is the size, because we always know the size matter for everything. Yeah.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Any other question? Yes, Catherine, Dr. Megan.
I'm trying to remember, I think in the very beginning, you didn't cover it in any tests, but you said something about the non-professional investors.
Yeah, retail investor.
Okay, because I was thinking, this is just a thought, because you're doing it from the date of enforcement, so that's kind of a public announcement that professional investors may be looking in the financial statements, and then these companies might have to be putting something under contingency well before the end of the enforcement. And so these institutional investors may be getting out earlier. Might be just something interesting to look at. That's part of your main test, to look at the retail versus non-retail. Because they were going to be announcing it, that the company is facing this charge in the contingency well before the end of the enforcement.
Okay.
But not all investors are going to see that and know for that. But I would say the professional ones.
So you look into the institutional ownership. So how will they respond when the company involves in this FCPA? So did they have a change of their ownership within the company, right?
Like back when the annual report comes out, the first time they mention it.
I like it. I like the idea, because my doctor dissertation essay, I'm looking for the bailout, last financial crisis. So we did see the institutional ownership, they bought by the foot. They just walk away from the company. They don't want to stay in here because you got the government serving as a preferred stock shareholder in the bank, and they don't like that. Yeah, so they walk away. So they might be a very interesting topic. So we can extend from there. Institutional ownership, the change of institutional ownership within the company. Thank you. So it's 1:32. Thank you very much for all your passion and listen to me. So feel free to send me the email if you have any question or any comment for us to improve. You know, we are ongoing process and we're trying to be better. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.